Now look, I understand people are going to consider this a 2015 movie. It's even nominated for the 2015 awards. Usually when there's a limited release date and then only a few weeks later there's a wide release date, I go with the wide release date as the official release date for the film because I feel wide release trumps limited every time. Because who knows how many theaters are considered limited during that release date. It could be just a handful of theaters that got it. And because in the US the wide release date for this film was January 8th, I considered this the first 2016 film of the year, and it will probably stay my favorite for a very long time. So The Revenant is a very basic story about human survival through nature and the motivation of revenge driving him forward. So in a way, this is both a revenge story as well as a human survival story. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, who guides this group of people through the wilderness to get enough furs to trade and have a business. Something goes terribly wrong and their visit is cut short. As the remaining survivors are trudging through the wilderness to get home, Leonardo DiCaprio suffers a terrible bear attack, and not only is his son killed, the only thing he has in his life. He's also left for dead, and now he wants revenge for the person responsible for killing his son and leaving him for dead, who of course happens to be Tom Hardy. Now, I had a feeling this movie would be very graphic. I had a feeling it was going to be brutal and intense. I didn't really think it was going to be as brutal as it is. It is really graphic, very intense, really awesome. The bear scene alone is just cringeworthy compared to how just brutal and savage it really is. But it even gets more brutal and more savage throughout the film, and it makes sense because it's a man doing what he needs to survive, as well as a revenge story, so it's got both of those levels of graphic violence. And I thought one scene in Hateful Eight was hard to watch. This is one of those films that it's just, oh my god. Whenever it comes to a wound in a neck or dealing with a neck wound or something in the neck, I just cringe up every time. It's like my weak spot when it comes to graphic points in movies. Anything dealing with the neck, I just go, And then there's this part dealing with a wound in the neck, and I gotta say, it was hard to watch. I was almost turning away and ready to shut my eyes because I was just the brutality, the savagery, the lengths that our main character goes through in order to survive the wilderness is just marvelous and just so intense, and you feel it the whole way through. It shows in Leonardo DiCaprio's acting, it shows on his face, it shows everything, just like how much hell he goes through in order to get his revenge. Leonardo DiCaprio is a damn good actor, and this is one of those films that proves it wholeheartedly. He really carries the weight of the film on his shoulders. It's also very clear that they shot on location because it doesn't look like CGI, it doesn't look like some fake looking scenery. This looks like real wilderness and really breathtakingly beautiful wilderness that just so happens to be very, very dangerous, which I think gave the more realistic performances with our actors because it really shows. And despite the plot being a very simple survival through the wilderness to get his revenge sort of story, there is a little bit more complexity with the people that are chasing him and a few of the things that are going on with the characters that have left him behind. There's definitely a lot more complexity than I realized would be in this film. Cinematography is definitely a work of art, especially during the action sequences. Every action sequence, practically, is just one long shot that goes through the complex and the crazy, very multi-layered battles that happen throughout this movie. Like, it's one long shot, the camera just squirms and just wiggles around through the area, and you just see the complexity, you see all the layers and all the craziness that's happening in the background of all the main characters' main battles. It's just really epic in scope and just so complex in how they were able to shoot the film the way they did during those action sequences. And my mouth was just like dropped open during almost every action sequence in this film. Now, I think there are two things in this film that some people might not like. For one, this film is very long and you can definitely feel it. During the whole middle section of the film, it does get a bit repetitive, and yeah, it does feel like it's really bogging down, despite it having a bunch of action sequences and a bunch of things that are just so damn interesting. But I think that's due to the fact that it's so close in our main character. It wants us to feel the same as him as he's trying to survive the wilderness. And of course, he's going to trudge through the wilderness a very long time. He's on foot. He's not on horseback. There's no cars during then because it's in the 1800s, the early 1800s. And so it's going to take him a long time to catch up with the people that left him behind and to catch up and get to the fort that they were heading to. So of course it's going to take many days, and you really feel it. You feel his struggle as he's going through day to day, going through the wilderness, dealing with all these different random obstacles that he has to deal with. And so of course the film does feel long, but in a really good way, I feel. Another thing that's a little nitpicky that I don't mind too much, but I can definitely see a bunch of people not liking at all, Tom Hardy's performance. And it's not necessarily his performance. I think he's really good. I think his character is really amazing. He's a really good antagonist for the film. It's just that he has a very thick accent in this film. So much so that it's sometimes really, really difficult to understand what he's saying. And it doesn't help that he has this low voice again, like kind of like his Bane voice, but this time he's got like this thick, almost southern sort of like Cajun type accent or whatnot. It's really hard to explain, but it's one of those accents I'm like, but yeah, it's one of those accents that I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before in movies and pioneer type movies and movies such as this. I just can't quite place what kind of accent it is, but it's realistic in that sense where it's a little hard to understand. But I never felt completely lost, and I never felt like I didn't understand a single word he said. I always felt like I understood the gist of what he's saying. I understand the I felt like I understand the key moments to his dialogue, and so it never really bothered me too much. But it feels like one of those things that I have to see over and over again and listen over and over again to figure out what he's truly saying. It almost felt like he needed subtitles, kind of like that guy from Chappie who would speak English but he had that thick accent, so they automatically started giving him subtitles. If you saw Chappie, I think you might remember who I'm talking about. He was like the bad gang leader, not like any of the main characters, but the really bad, really bad guy. Yeah, Tom Hardy might have needed subtitles for this film. But again, that's something I could forgive the film for because it felt authentic, it felt real, and most of this film felt completely real and didn't feel like it was fake, it didn't feel like it was staged, it felt like we were really there, it was really gritty, it was a survival story, a revenge story, and a really epically shot and directed one and acted one at that. The Revenant is 5 stars. Look at this. First film of 2016 for me, in my opinion, and it's already got a 5 star. So that's a really good start for the year. So have you seen The Revenant? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If not, what is your favorite man versus wild nature story? As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.